Okay, welcome everyone. Doug here with the LincolnList.com, and today we're going to talk about, is little baby NIO? Well, he's not really a baby anymore. He's like 20 now, especially after yesterday. But is little baby NIO ready to uncork and maybe trade to 50? To 50? We're going to talk about that and the stock market in just a minute. Okay, before we start talking about NIO, let me warn you of some of my personality defaults. I might continue to rant a little on the heavy side with this stock because I've been in it for a while. I have a swing position in the 13s. It's not the greatest entry in the world, but it's doing pretty good. But over the last few weeks or so, especially like almost a month, this thing's just been chopping around a direction, and every time it sneaks its way into the 20s, it seemed to just get smacked right back down. So it's just been one of those stocks that's sort of been like a tease. You're like, oh, today's the day NIO's going to rip. Okay, it's not. Oh, today's the day NIO's going to rip. Okay, no, it's not. And then, of course, yesterday, finally, this thing really not only breaks up through that 20, but closes really, really strong. So this could begin the next leg. Now, one of the things about this stock that's a little different, normally I have a very specific pattern that I trade for swings at some of the bigger board stocks, but this was like a speculation trade. And I think if you're a speculator, you know, you have to own some Bitcoin and an EV stock. Like, isn't that like the things to own these days? You got to have a crypto and an EV play, right? Because it just seems that these things to be popping up everywhere. And I think with this one, it was a little bit different. You have a smaller price tag, which is going to draw in a different type of trader. And you have that EV persona that gives it a little extra edge here. And I think when you see something like that, it has the makings of something that can go from $20 to $100 easily. Now, maybe I shouldn't use the word easily, but it has that type of potential. Now, if you guys ever came to the webinar that I did, if you didn't, you want to watch it in your spare time, just put it up in the YouTube search bar, State of the Market in 2020. I talked at the very beginning of that webinar how there's always a handful of stocks that go from like 20, like from nothing to super something. And we've seen that year. We've seen huge moves like Peloton in the 20s, over 100. We saw DOCU and ZM start at 200. Those things are like freaking $200, $400 for like ZM. I mean, these things have started in the 20s. Even Wayfair was sunk down into the 20s. Just previously here for the coronavirus correction is like, I don't know how many hundreds it is. I've lost track. So there's always a handful, the GoPros, the rare earths. There's always this, whatever you want to call it. There's always this type of emotion and this type of trade in the market every year. Our job is to try to find those. And I think maybe you see that here. And the reason I feel that way is at this particular price tag, you know that not only do you have the institution, but you have a high amount of influence through retail traders. So when you're doing an Apple, well, maybe Apple, you have some retailers in it, but now Tesla, I mean, how many retailers are in that? And if there are, what are they trading? Like 2 shares? Like 3 shares of Amazon? I mean, the average person, let's just be honest, I'm not calling, I'm not judging, I'm just saying the average person trading, has they got enough money to run around to buy thousands of shares of Amazon, you know? So there's a different influence on here. And I do know that these types of stocks like to be chased by people, and you got a pretty good setup. Now, I would advise you right now, do not buy this stock right away. This thing has to do what every stock that breaks out has to do, at least in my mind. And these things have to test, they have to back test a little bit. They have to test this rally. So I want to kind of look at this chart and show you what's happened. Now, from here, you have this big, huge parabolic rally, and you get your first back test of that. And I'm sure a stock like this can also suck in tons and tons of shorts, which could just accelerate a breakout here. But unlike a lot of these stocks, which end up giving all of this back, your cheesy old penny stocks and your scam stocks, pump stocks, junk stocks, a lot of those give it back. This did not. It actually started to grind up slowly. And when it broke out over here, it made a pretty significant parabolic move. I mean, look at the size of those back-to-back candles. And then since that point, it's just kind of been battered around back and forth. And we've also gone through a little bit of market change too, of where it's gone back and forth. So that might have a little bit of influence on it. The thing is, each time this breaks a range, what follows is a significantly large move. And you saw that, right back in this area. And then again, you saw that a few weeks back or a month back here. And then maybe we're primed to see this thing now try to stretch its way into 30. Now, this pop right here that got it out, because just a couple of days ago, it looked like hell warmed over. I got to be honest with you. I actually debated. I'm not going to lie. I debated selling it. I was like, you know what? I've had enough of this bitch. I don't want to keep holding on to this garbage. It's just like cobwebs growing on my money that was here. And I'm like, 1 or 2 bad days of this, and I'll be giving back all the gains that I do have. So I had to kind of weigh that. I'm like, oh, well, I give it another day or two. Good thing I did. Sometimes you make the right call. Sometimes you don't. On this one so far, it looks that way. But, I was just sitting down here in the 16s the other day. So with these, I think it was Deutsche Bank, give it some good comments here. I think this thing has the potential to run to 30. So here's the trade. First of all, if you're in it at a better price, 13 is okay for me. Some of you probably even better, If you're not in this at all, I wouldn't make this my first bet going into a Monday. Not Monday, going into tomorrow or today when you're watching this based on when I publish the video. I wouldn't go into this right away here. I would let this thing test. I think early on, maybe you get a spike. You'd have to let this thing kind of feel out. But I think if it holds this area, especially if it can establish some sort of base for a day or two, you could quite see a run to 30. Now, maybe it's one of those stocks that just does not give you that opportunity. It just takes off like a ZM and it's like, it's gone. I still wouldn't recommend you chasing because you never know what you're going to get into. And poor entry prices are like the biggest reason people end up losing money because you get a bad entry, you're behind the 8 ball the whole way. So I'm kind of thinking over the next week, 2 weeks on this, you might see a press up towards 30. So what I'm saying here from this point, if you're asking how do you trade this? Well, I would specifically look for dips first, any pullbacks in that, and monitor how are those being treated. Are buyers stepping in to support this stock around certain areas? Are they going to continue to hold the 20 level on this stock? If you're opening up to a bearish market, which right now we're like minus 260s, 280s when I'm doing this here in the overnight futures, is this market pullback here, this market hit after the debate, is this going to cause any sort of disruption to this pattern? We need to watch that closely. But I think in a case like this, when you're looking at this stock, it has that type of potential to really, really move a lot higher. So keep this NIO up there. Pay attention to it. I think we're going to see 30 on this thing here sometime by mid-October, or at least I'd like to see 30. And who knows, once they get going like that, don't underestimate the stupidity of the human chaser, right? Have we not seen stocks like VLTC, KBI? Have we not just seen absolute flat out ignorance when people come to chase? Maybe the perfect storm lines up. That remains to be seen. But I like the way this looks. I like the way that it's continued to hold. And even though you could make the case that it's overbought from the beginning of the year because it was like in the single digits. Now it's up like, I don't know how many thousands of percent. I can't do math that good. But there's still room in it, That's what people said about DOCU when it was $40. It was overpriced. I remember Goldman Sachs downgrading Tesla at 44, calling it basically a scam. We know how that worked out. So you never know. I'm not saying this is the next Tesla, but maybe we can make some rublets on this bad boy. So that brings me to something else I want to add here real quick. I'm doing these market mutterings every day again now, and I'm trying to specifically talk about individual names and give more in-depth analysis so you guys can make more trades other than say, well, this one might set up, that one might set up. I want to focus. As you know, I did DOCU, and I want to go back and talk about that DOCU here real quick because a lot of you sent questions like, how do you trade it? Well, I kind of went over that. It didn't confirm. It just is not confirmed. It got up there yesterday. The same thing. It's the same pattern that we've seen the last 3 or 4 days. It keeps sniffing up around that 216s, 217s. It doesn't want to get through. So just to kind of reconfirm what I said is this: sometimes these things break out the day you want them to break out. I'm not a miracle man. I can't predict the future. If I did, the stock trading shit would be a lot easier. I wouldn't have lost like half my hair, my sanity over the two decades of doing this. I wouldn't be this nuts right now if I could predict the future. But that's what you still need to get this thing to kick. If it doesn't close at 216 or 217s, it's not a swing. It's not ready yet to go. And when a market's this volatile that keeps continuing to change its mind, damn, you never know what you're going to run into. But still, keep it up there. Maybe it's something that happens today. Maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe it's next week. That's the beauty, or not the beauty for some of you, is being a trader, that 90% of your ideas never confirm. And that's why you got to keep digging around and finding something else. Now, as far as the market, I did want to touch on that because that's how these used to be, was really market focused. I'm just going to make some quick comments on the SPY because some of you might be talking about this debate, the impact of this debate. I don't think debates really make too much of a difference or moving the needle too much here on the markets. It might shake some jitters here real quickly, but I think, you know, in the minds of the voters, their minds are made up what side they're going to be on. If anything, maybe when we watched the debates last night, you could say, how in the hell did we end here? How did we get these two old men acting like they're in kindergarten? What the frick is wrong with us? That's another topic. How did we get here? But anyway, I wouldn't be too alarmed by that. We'll just have to let the market settle out. It's gonna be choppy now, and I've talked to you guys about that before. You got to kind of block out the noise, use longer time frame charts, and try to clean up what you do as a trader. Because if you watch the video I said when the market might sell off before the election, you got to remember historically going into an election, the September and October are bearish months. That doesn't mean this one has to be bearish, but when you take that historically, a possibility of an administration change or the possibility of many things in this country changing, including like the Fed and everyone else like that, that can keep institutions from wanting to just put money to work, you know, at least for the long term, or commit a little bit longer term. That's what it really means. In the grand scheme of things, 5 years from now, it's just like it won't matter at all. But that's the theory here. So you're going to see some back and follow. Why the hell can I not talk? I didn't even have any whiskey. You're going to see some back and forth movements and volatility here. You're going to have some jitters. You're just going to have to deal with that. Best way to do it, lower position size, more discriminatory when it comes to your trades, and just being more patient. You just got to work your way through a situation like this. And I also think with what's surrounding us with the coronavirus, a second wave of a shutdown, that's going to have maybe a different impact as well. So there's a lot of things here on the table. You just have to, everything has to be condensed into a shorter term horizon. You got to be able to shift your biases here from one day to the next if you want to move through this the best. If you're a long-term trader or an investor, you're looking at December, January, or February, don't sweat this. It's really nothing. It'll be fine. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let's kind of go through it here real quick. New stock on watch for you is NIO. I wouldn't buy into this big rip. There's too much instability here. There's too much unknowns. Let it back test a little bit, but pay attention. It could really start to squeeze, and you could see a 30, maybe even a $50 run if everybody gets nuts, you know, at this time of the year. Maybe it's like a harvest moon or something. I don't know. DOCU, the stock that I talked about yesterday, didn't confirm, but still keep it up there 260. These things are tricky, right? They like to fool you. So maybe it's going to be something that's delayed for a day or 2 or 3, I don't know, or 10 years. Who knows, right? DOCU's still on the table. It didn't confirm. So if you're swinging that thing, or you're looking for the investment, it's not ready yet. You need to see a little bit more. Got a 216, 217. Got to get a close. It has to finish the day over 216. That's the other one. The market, we're just going to have to deal with this. It's probably going to be a bumpy October, but it's not going to be coronavirus killing correction madness. I think it's just going to be a lot of whipsaw action back and forth. It's understandable. We're just moving through this time, just encountering a little turbulence here. All storms shall pass. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Any comments, quarrels, curmudgeoning, suggestions, send them to me. Put them down in the comment box. As always, guys, trade well. Talk to you soon.